was stood down last time and was asked to do it again, last week specifically. So I'll go ahead to read the motion, and also to add that as at the time I raised the motion, myself and 2 others were the co-sponsors. But after that, our distinguished colleagues, 64 of them, as you said, and in fact there are other senators that their names did not appear. So I will pass paper around for those senators to put their name so that it will be reflected in the votes and proceedings. The Senate notes the huge disparity and uneven disbursement of about $500 billion loans to the states of the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria and the states in the country in 2021 by Development Bank of Nigeria. Aware that the bank's annual integrated statutory report of 2021 obtained on 13 July 2022 from the organization's website showed that the bank disbursed a loan worth about $500 billion, that is 483 billion, out of which only 17%, that's an adjustment there, went to the 19 states of northern Nigeria. And in addition, 10% to other 5 geopolitical zones. I'm sorry, while 47% went to Lagos alone. Other 5 states, that is not there, so that I'm stating it now. That is other states in the southwest, 5 states, got only 10%. Also aware that 11% of the loan went to North Central, which totals about 53,130,000,000, while as I stated earlier, Lagos got 47%, that is about 227,100,000,000. Observes that the loan were given out to the 6 geopolitical zones as follows. And as I stated, the Southwest got 57%, but Lagos got 47%, and other 5 states of the Southwest got 10%. South-South 17%, North Central 11%, Southeast 9%, Northwest 5%, and Northeast 1%. Recalls that the Development Bank of Nigeria exists, and that is the reason why that bank was formed, to alleviate financial constraints being faced by micro, small, medium-scale enterprises in Nigeria through providing finance, partial credit guarantees, and technical assistance to eligible financial intermediaries on market-conforming and fully financially sustained basis. And also notes that the top 5 sectors considered for the loans were oil and gas 42%, manufacturing 16%, agriculture and forestry 7.2%, trade commerce 6.3%, and transportation and storage 3.5%. Before I go to the prayers, distinguished colleagues, they have what they call participating financial institutions, that is microfinance banks. So far the bank is using about 64 of them, out of which 60 are in Lagos. 4 only are spread around the other 35 states in the country. And I want to also tell my colleagues that the other developmental finance institutions that they call DFI include Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, Nigeria Export Finance and Import Bank, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, National Economic Reconstruction Fund, Nigeria Infrastructure Development Bank, and NISA. And I want to tell my colleagues that the ownership of the Developmental Bank, Development Bank of Nigeria specifically, is owned by 60% of it is owned by the federal government of Nigeria. That gives us the power to not only oversight, but also to have a strong say in how the institution discharges its responsibilities. Having said that, distinguished colleagues, I conclude by the Senate accordingly resolves to set up an ad hoc committee to carry out a holistic investigation into the matter and report back to the Senate in 4 weeks for further legislative action. In conclusion, Mr. President, last time there was purported to be a report. I read the report. And there was a letter written from the Senate. I read the letter. The letter was signed, dispatched by the clerk on 9th June. And this Senate was inaugurated on the 13th. I read the letter. It contains, I'm sorry to say, nothing, because it did not address the matters raised in the motion. I don't want to go back to the issue of report, because it was written by this Senate, and they are my colleagues, I was part of it. But it was more of reportage than report. Thank you, distinguished colleagues.
But I wouldn't take over the discussion. I would have loved to ask that the loans, do they just give or you apply? Because if you have to receive application before the loan is disbursed, and then Lagos being the nerve center of Nigerian economy, and most of the businesses are in Lagos, almost all of us here started life with our businesses in Lagos. Supposing Lagos applied up to this percentage and the other states did not apply, because it is not a grant. But let somebody second the motion. I wouldn't want to call on Senator. I don't want to call on Senator Sani Musa. But do you know why I don't want to call on Senator Sani Musa? He's the one that has the last report of the last Senate. So Senator Sani Musa.
What is the co-sponsor?
Oh, is the co-sponsor? Okay, in that case, let me recognize Senator Ojus Akalo.
I stand to support this motion, second this motion ably presented by the Chief Whip. In seconding the motion, Mr. President, I will take leave of you to just say a few things about this. I'm in support of what you were saying. Loans are not given to communities. Rather, communities apply for loan. So nobody should say that Lagos have the largest number of this loan. I'm from Southeast, and we have 2-3 companies that
Yes, distinguished Senator Ojus Akalo, you have seconded the motion, and you have seconded the motion, and you have my protection to contribute to the motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. For example, I know 1 or 2 companies that they are not from Lagos, but they live in Lagos. They are doing businesses in Lagos, and they obtain this kind of loans. So these loans are not given by where you come from. They're given by application you made to the bank and the guarantees you are ready to offer to development bank. This is purely business. It had nothing to do with politics. It had nothing. This is purely commercial, because you have to pay interest. You have to fulfill the conditions given by the bank. So bringing numbers of people or numbers of zones that have collected this loan should not really, it will be dicey, because you don't get what you don't ask for. People have asked for this loan. They asked for it. They've asked for this loan, and I'm sure there are conditionalities that you have to fulfill before these loans are given. Mr. President, I support to investigate what happened, but I also saying that it's purely business. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleague, Adeola Solomon Olamilekan, representing the good people of Ogun West Senatorial District. Mr. President, I want to make very few comments and also draw a note of caution on this particular motion. Let me start by sharing the sentiment as expressed by the movers of this motion, who with the statistics he has given to us in this motion shows that his own region, that is the northeast, where he comes from, has been shortchanged by these figures he has shown in this motion. But Mr. President, the institution that is involved here is a reputable institution. It's an institution that have laws, rules and principles that is guiding their day-to-day activities. And as such, whatever they would do in terms of granting or giving loans to individuals or any organization has to follow the laid down rules and procedure of this particular organization. I want to appeal to us as a Senate to please let us give this motion a second look. Somebody has worked on this motion in the past. He has a report. They have invited these banks and all that are involved. They have given reasons and how they arrived at these particular statistics as given by my brother. Mr. President, so that we don't overflog this motion again, I will suggest, because from the statistics, Lagos got 47, other Southwest got 10, and coming down the line, 1% to Northeast. I want to believe, what is the objective of this loan? What are the criteria that are involved? Who and who are eligible to get this loan? And what are the conditions you must fulfill before you access this loan? These are pertinent questions that need to be answered. And I would strongly suggest that if Senator Ali Ndume felt so bad about this, that let's go ahead and set up another ad hoc committee to give it a second look, and looking at all these criteria that has been set or put in place by this development bank, and see if the region or all the regions in this country has been given a fair hearing in terms of access to this loan before we pass any major comment or take any drastic action. I'm pleading, let's set up another committee without wasting time so that we can address this motion once and for all and move forward from this, because this motion, if care is not taken, will not only be dividing us, we will be looking at this motion from the perspective that one region is favored more than the other, without looking at the nitty-gritty of what is contained in the document for you to access this said loan. I so submit, Mr. President.
Thank you. Please sit down. The reality of it is that this is a corrective Senate. So our job is to look at things that happened in the past, even things that are happening now, and things that will happen in the future. And Senator Ndume must have more information. He must have more information than so that's why I said he wouldn't have brought it a second time. So let's, for the benefit of our colleagues who are new, let's give opportunity to those who were in the last committee that actually worked on this motion and brought out a report, which the clerk of the Senate has availed me one. In fact, the communication clerk, there was communication from you, there was communication from the Senate. The clerk of the National Assembly communicated the resolutions of the Senate on this same matter. So let us start from those who were members of the last ad hoc committee. Senator Sani.
Sani Musa, representing Niger East. This motion is very apt and important that understand. Different from palliatives. And that was the reason why we called all the agencies that were involved in giving grants, loans, and palliatives. So, Nigerian Development Bank, actually these funds came from German International Financial Corporation. And when they brought this, they came with a lot of criteria, terms of which this loan will be disbursed. And when we were looking at it, we felt definitely some areas or some communities or some centers, regions in this country will definitely not be able to access. After Development Bank gave us that, we now invited the Minister of Finance, who she came with the Director of Minister of Finance Incorporation, who guaranteed that loan from the German bank. So, but the area we saw problem is the way Amana Nigerian Development Bank handled it. It selected some financial, like the micro banks he has spoken about 64 or so. And out of that 64, about 43 from Lagos. And then about 53 from Lagos and about 11 from the 6 other geopolitical zones. Doing that is that all the microfinance banks were not capitalized as one of the criteria. They don't have the capital to be able to get, because there is certain counterpart funding that you have to prove you have before the bank will release that funds to you. And then secondly, there was no enlightenment. The publicity was not, there was no enlightenment. The bank did not really make it very open. They said, oh, we have a portal. And we asked them, it's not every Nigerian that goes to the internet. They said they deal with states. A lot of states, they have taken these things to them. Just as I was talking to my former governor, who is also a distinguished senator, he did mention to me that yes, he gave a counterpart funding, but it depends on the amount you've been able. If you raise 1 billion naira, only 1 billion counterpart will be given for you to be able to access that facility. So this was the reason, and Lagos was able to give that. In fact, the area we are supposed to look at now is the criteria. But as I'm talking to you, 66% of these funds have been paid back, and the bank is only basing their criteria on the basis that you'll be able to repay this loan, so that it will be an evolving loan. So this is basically the issue. Some areas that we looked at also is the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Just after the COVID, Central Bank released a lot of money. I think if we are going to be very honest with ourselves, that is the particular area, because even at the time the committee is working, Central Bank refused to give us full details of what we requested. And then when you go to the Anchor Borrowers program, that is also Central Bank using NASA. They have given us the tabulated table, of which it shows that the Northwest, Northeast have, in fact, Northeast, particularly Gombe, have taken quite, in fact, the highest in the North in areas of Anchor Borrowers loans that were given. So, Your Excellency, I think with this contribution, we need to set up the committee if necessary, and then look at this again. But I do not think the documents that have been presented to us on this particular one, a different document will be presented to us again. So what we need to do as a Senate is to see how we can look at those criteria. Even if it is we're setting up an ad hoc committee, the ad hoc committee should be responsible to looking at ways to mitigate those lapses that makes our people not being able to access these loans. And I will be very frank here. Some of our own people, when I mean our own people, some from the far north, have not really been convinced and agreed to take that loan on the basis that it is an interest loan. Because Nigerian government got this money, I think, at 7%. The banks were giving it to the microfinance banks at 9%. And no microfinance bank gave out this loan at less than 17%. So these are things that we need to also look at and see where, because they make things very difficult. Thank you, Mr. President. I think if you need more, I will come up later.
That was that one would say were the resolutions of the last Senate, but for this matter to still linger means that there may be more to it than meets the eye, so that we can get more enlightened. Distinguished Senator Ndume, I've heard from the former chairman of the committee. In fact, let me also, you have also informed me that the chairman of this bank that did this lopsided disbursement is from the Northwest, and the managing director is from Kogi, from North Central, and they shut out Northwest, they shut out North Central. So you can see that we need to find out what actually happened, because if you are from Northwest and you shut out Northwest, you shut out Northeast, you shut out North Central, and you concentrated on Lagos alone. Do you have additional information?
Sir, yes. Now that you have given my colleague the chance, he was the chairman of the committee and I was a member, co-opted member. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, for proper guidance, when I sponsored this motion, myself and Bomai and Senator Yao, when I read the motion last week, 64 of my colleagues signed on to the motion as co-sponsors. If we are procedurally following the Senate debate, this motion is automatic because 64 members have supported it. We will allow for debate, yeah. And let me remind my colleagues in the country, and let me also add, sir, that this motion, I sponsored this motion getting my facts from the website of the bank, Developmental Bank of Nigeria, and it was Association of Microfinance Banks from other regions that complained to me. Our governors in other regions reached out to Developmental Bank and were willing to guarantee these loans, but they were not given. So that's why I'm insisting that we should look at it closely. We should look at it again. Look at the motion. If there is nothing into it, please throw it away. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The distinguished Senator Ismail Akawu.
Colleagues, I am Sadiq Suleiman Umar. I represent the good and decent people of Kwara North, and we all are. Mr. President, as a member of this ad hoc committee, I went to that committee furious that how can this happen? By the time we collected the information and analyzed the data, zonally, state, down to my senatorial district, and we requested for data from these people to know what happened, I was convinced that this was done professionally. However, Mr. President, this is the Senate. There is a philosophical underpinning why we don't clap hand here. Clapping is emotional. We don't want to be emotional. We are old men. Even if you are younger than Senator Abbo, you are an old man. Mr. President, what happened? We need to look at it deeper by allowing the ad hoc committee to be set up. However, we must be guided that no matter what the disparity is, no matter what the conditions are, we still need to try to balance and support the weakest. So the ad hoc committee should be looking at what can we do to ensure that all of these lopsidedness or assumptions are corrected or mitigated. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, this basically lies on us facing our committees doing their proper oversight job, making sure that they are strategic from the beginning. For any agency they are supervising, they need to look at the details to be sure that where there is a problem, it is solved before we start seeing the symptom and people start reacting emotionally to what the problem is. Thank you.
Sir Jibrin, representing Kogi East. Your Excellency, I just want to provide further guideline or further guide, okay, to the committee that's going to be constituted to take a look at this problem. First, the ownership structure of the Development Bank of Nigeria is unique. IFC, World Bank have shares in that bank. It is not a wholly owned Nigerian Development Bank. The equity holders that I've mentioned, they set the guidelines with respect to the disbursement requirements. Okay? And in most cases, they look at the feasibility report, they look at the bookkeeping, they look at the collateral requirements, and many other credit requirements. Okay? And these requirements are of international standard, not Nigeria customized standard. Okay? So, sir, the problem we have to do with documentation. Some of these enterprises may not be able to meet the documentation requirement of the Development Bank of Nigeria because of the ownership structure. Okay, and the owners have set down the guidelines that this is the way, this is what and what is required for any facility to be granted. Your Excellency, sir, at this point, I may also want to employ some of the enterprises that cannot meet the requirements of the Development Bank of Nigeria to meet. Request for facilities or loans from wholly owned Nigerian development banks, because some of these requirements are relaxed by those banks. Bank of Industry, for example, may not give this type of stiff requirements. Bank of Agriculture may not give this type of stiff requirements. So, sir, this is just a further guide to the committee that is going to take a look at this problem. Thank you, Excellency.
OFR, representing Kano South Senatorial District, Mr. President from Kano. Mr. Speaker, sorry sir, I just remember the Green Chamber. Mr. President, sir, I listened attentively to the mover and our dear distinguished colleague, distinguished Senator Solomon, and all others who contributed in this debate. And from aggregate opinion, it shows that we are very serious and we are doing our best to go out of box to find the solution of Nigerians' problem. Mr. President, I listened to you, but from my own understanding, we will marry the argument and arrive in a position. Before constituting ad hoc committee, Mr. President, I agree with some part of the submission of distinguished Senator Solomon. There are some criteria, there are some reasons where Lagos benefited more in this loan. And we need to attend those challenges, which is not particular to Development Bank. It is all over the financial institution in Nigeria. And as a Senate, we need to sit down and look and go out of box to think. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, there is lack of access and information on what National Development Bank are doing. For example, last week, somebody goes there for an information on how to apply for a loan in in this bank. They told him that he will go back and do it through their website. To reach them through website, which is very difficult. We need to look into the system of information on how to access that loan. Secondly, higher rate of interest blocks some of Nigerians from applying or doing business with our banks. Shorter period of repayment, higher cost of doing business in Nigeria, difficult and tedious bureaucratic process in obtaining the loan. For example, most of our commercial banks, which this loan is channeled through them, are not accepting a collateral from any other state. Their grade A state is Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt.
This information you are giving us may be some of the things that we'll find out when we look into the matter.
To share this information before arriving in a position. And sir, there is one fundamental issue which you rise, northwest, and some other reason or some other people in the northwest, in the Nigeria. Sir, most of these financial institutions didn't recognize non-interest banking and Islamic financial system, which most of our people refuse to participate. Therefore, for us to, that is the reason why northwest, even the MD or the chairman is from northwest. They are less interested in participating in this business. And when you go to the Lagos, the entire financial transaction in Nigeria is almost 60 to 65% is controlled by Lagos, whether you like it or no. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, we need to sit down. Very sorry, distinguished colleague. Most of the action of the Senate today is like a House of Representatives. That is the reason why it remember me and Speaker, former Speaker Temple is intimidating me by sitting close to me. Therefore, Mr. President, we need to sit down as a senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and look on this issue beyond sentiment, beyond region or any other sentiment. Let us act as Nigeria. Let us act as leaders of Nigeria. Let us think critically and find the lasting solution of this problem. Not National Development Bank alone. All the financial institutions of Nigeria, there is total exclusion. Almost 60% of Nigeria are excluded from participating or enjoying financial intervention from government or other financial institution, either locally or internationally. I so submit, Mr. President.
Representing Gombe Central. I was not a member of the committee, but I was a member of the Senate where these issues were discussed. Mr. President, this is straightforward. 64 senators supported this motion. And I have listened carefully to all the previous speakers. None of them was opposed to setting up an ad hoc committee. So I think, Mr. President, instead of going, repeating ourselves, let's go ahead and set up this ad hoc committee, allow the committee reasonable time to do its work, even if it means going into the report already in your hand and adding any other information they get and make a recommendation to the Senate. I think that's the way forward, Mr. President. Thank you.
I think that is a very fantastic suggestion. The distinguished Senator Wadada, you heard what Senator Goje said, that 64 members have signed on to this motion, and there will be no need for us to continue debating. So it's important that we move on with other business.
That outing is very vital. In looking at this motion, bearing in mind the sentiments around and about it, I would like us to look at the framework of this, the disbursement of this loan. And if you look at talking about the framework, you will see the sectorial allotments as to the percentages. The sectorial allotments here, if you look at it, which of course ridicules most of the policies Nigeria stands for today. All previous governments, and in fact this government, have been committed to diversifying and boosting the economic activities in the country. That is giving less attention to the oil sector. But if you look at the sectorial allotments here, percentage-wise, 42% of the total loan sum was allocated or allotted to oil and gas sector. And ironically or ridiculously, the agriculture, forestry and fishery sector that you have been paying services to, I mean, with due respect, I may leave service now to only got allocation, I mean 7 point something percent allocated to it. So if you look at it from the perspective of the sectorial percentage allocations, I mean, it virtually justifies all that had happened. Just that's as information, so that we will be well guided in.
Well, thank you. I tell you, of that ad hoc committee, and with the further explanation that the bank in question is owned by various international agencies, including the IFC, and it's not a wholly owned Nigerian bank. So it's business. They may want to set their own criteria, and so the criteria for the states that are outside Lagos may not be able to meet the criteria. And somebody also said that they were very interested in the collateral, and so if the collateral is located where they feel they cannot reach, if there was a breach, they may not accept. But still, I think we should look into the issue. Why I think we should look into the issue is that there may be recommendations here that can help us in future. At the end, when there's a review or even the report that has been availed me now by the clerk of the Senate, the report of the former ad hoc committee that was set up. So I think we should go into the prayers, because otherwise we'll be flogging the issue and everybody will keep saying the same thing over and over. Senator Egweyong, you are still raising your hand. If you are in support of the motion, there is no point in raising your hand unless you have anything against the motion.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Asuko Egweyong, Senator, representative of the motion. However, there's important information that needs to be relayed.
You are against the motion?
I am in favor, but there's an important information that the Senate needs to be aware of. I am a data man, and the disparity in this disbursement is extremely alarming. And what it portends for Nigeria as a nation, as an ongoing concern, is that it is implied that 50% of our businesses are in one state. Not one region, but one state, Lagos State. It is also further implied, as we know, that Lagos, having one of the smallest landmass, may account for just 1% of the landmass of Nigeria. It is a strategic risk to the ongoing concern of this country if there were a natural disaster or an act of God. And so it is important that as a Senate, we take note. No, listen please, as a Senate, I'm saying this as a guide.
Let me thank you for your contribution. I've noted it. You said there is a serious risk to the Nigerian economy if 50% of the businesses are in Lagos alone, and that we must protect Lagos from natural disaster, which is an act of God. Senator Oshumole, do you have anything you want to add to it?
And the way in which Nigeria Constitution was structured is to ensure that any branch of the executive, as in this case, must reflect the sentiments and the aspirations of our constituents. There is no any other organ of government more than the parliament that can defend, amplify, and draw attention to issues affecting the respective constituencies, 109 of all of us. I found very unhelpful, with profound respect to Olamilekan's explanation about conditions. In my play, we have a saying that if you want to starve the dwarf, you can put the food on top of a table, knowing that the hand of the dwarf cannot touch it. Second, we spoke about the sovereignty of Nigeria earlier in the day when we commended the election of President Bola Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu. We are a sovereign nation. Whoever seeks to do business with Nigeria must recognize and formulate policies that reflect the Nigerian peculiarities. I am not persuaded that the fact that there are international interventions, they put their money here and there, therefore they should formulate policies for us. That is why myself, at a younger age, Nigerians were actively oppose the interference of foreign agencies. Poverty is not an excuse for us to mortgage our sovereignty. Our policies must be formulated in a way that takes into account the challenge of people in Borno, the challenge of people in Adamawa, the challenge of people in Edo State, the challenge of people in Cross River State. So all of these excuses about why some people can get, our business, Mr. President, is to ensure that Nigeria enjoys even development. All the sermon we made about rural-urban migration is rooted in these inequalities. That facilities exist in state capitals and they are denied in rural areas. And then we sermonize about the danger of rural-urban migration. We must take businesses to where the people are, those who really need it. And I listened to Musa very carefully. When you don't educate those who need to be educated, those who are afraid of borrowing, it is the duty of the state to educate them on the benefit of borrowing, that is not a sin. I therefore suggest that in moving forward, and of course I sign on to that program, not because it's Lagos, because some of those guys in Lagos may well come from Edo, but they move to Lagos because remaining in Edo, they may never be identified. So to achieve even development, which is what this democracy is about, I think we should look at this critically and review even what we think are untouchable. The World Bank is not coming from Asia. They are Nigerians, they have their biases, they have their favorites, and it's our business to represent the poorest among our states and among our regions. Thank you, sir.
Senator Oshmole, please check your mic.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Yao Sahabi Alhaji, Senator representing Zamfara Senatorial District. Mine should be an advice to the committee to be set off on this issue. And that advice has to do with what Nigeria needs now is peace, unity, and development. And to achieve this, Mr. President, there has to be justice, fairness, and equal developments. So whatever they are going to do, they should look at these two sides of the story. Mr. President, there is nothing bad in the country rejecting offers that does not take into consideration the disparity of the nation. If there should be any, I think the country can say, please modify this, or do this, or we don't take. When we don't take, what will be the problem if we don't take? So, Mr. President, let this committee be honest and fair to this country. The expectation of our people on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is higher, and we expect we will have a better deal under this government. And that's why Nigerians massively voted for him. So please, Mr. President, let there be a caution on the committee. Thank you very much.
Distinguished colleagues, that it's important we look at the unity of the country and then bringing any form of developmental initiative, be it loan or otherwise. I want to agree with you, but thank God this did not happen under the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, so it just didn't happen under the 10th Senate. And the 9th Senate had actually looked into this issue. This was the 2021 loan allocations, so I think it's important that we get that in mind. So I agree with you. Like I said, we are reviewing the issue. We must look into it because people are still not very happy about what happened, and the recommendations that will come out of the review will help us in terms of moving forward. Senator Plank, you feel you have something to contribute? observed that it's important we look at the unity of the country and then bringing any form of developmental initiative, be it loan or otherwise. I want to agree with you, but thank God this did not happen under the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, so it just didn't happen under the 10th Senate. And the 9th Senate had actually looked into this issue. This was the 2021 loan allocations, so I think it's important that we get that in mind. So I agree with you. Like I said, we are reviewing the issue. We must look into it because people are still not very happy about what happened, and the recommendations that will come out of the review will help us in terms of moving forward. Senator Plank, you feel you have something to contribute? The discussions, and thank God I recognize you. I didn't even know that Senator Sani Musa, who was chairman of the ad hoc committee, actually signed on to this motion. Because by signing on to this motion, it means that he himself is not satisfied with what he did in the 9th Senate. Yes, he's not satisfied with what he did in the 9th Senate, which means that he's also calling that this 10th Senate should also look into the issue in order to bring justice to bear. So I don't know why he was now leading us through opposing the motion. A motion that you signed on to, there was no need for us to go round and round. So, distinguished Senator Plank, thank you so much for this information. In view of that, we'll go straight into the prayers because he could not have signed on to this without realizing that there was need to look into this. So we go straight into the prayers. Let's even look at the prayer first. The prayer here, we'll come to you. You sign on to this.
Mr. President, I signed so that we can.
As we have all agreed and demonstrated, it is the right of any senator who perceives that an inequity has taken place to bring it up for discussion, for steps to be taken in the national interest. And secondly, as someone who represents a state and a region that has been crying for equity, inclusion, fairness, and justice. Because when people talk about unity, no one is against unity.
So the amendment is that a state that has been crying for...
The amendment I'm proposing is that, and I would have, if you had allowed me, I would have tied it up. The amendment I'm proposing is that the inquiry we're about to undertake, which I believe represents the unanimous view of the Senate, should not only be about the particular loan that is the subject matter of discussion today. We have to also use this opportunity in the national interest and in pursuit of the national objectives of inclusion, fairness, and equity, which is the principle that this motion is riding on. To also look at, Mr. President, what happened to the anchor borrowers' loans.
So dismissed Senator Dixon, your amendment is that we should urge that we should set up an ad hoc committee to look at yes. That is okay. So let's look at the first prayer. Set up an ad hoc committee to carry out a holistic investigation into the matter and report back to the Senate in 4 weeks. Is there any? Are we in agreement with this? Okay. In the absence of any counter, this is accepted. The additional prayer. There is no objection to this prayer, so that's what the Senate will do. Now, any additional prayer?
Mr. President and my dear colleagues, on these issues, some of it very touchy, is that this Senate should use this opportunity also to mandate this ad hoc committee so constituted to also examine and report on the distribution of all the intervention loans such as anchor borrowers, COVID-19 palliatives, and all that NISAL and all such that were disbursed by the central bank and related agencies. So that when the Senate is looking at this matter or looking at the report, we will have a comprehensive view, not just about Lagos State or Southwest, but we'll have a very comprehensive national view, so that whatever response we are coming...
No, you are debating. I just wanted prayer. Are you seconding the additional prayer?
Mr. President, I'm seconding it with further amendment. No, why not? No. Why not?
Leader of the Senate.
Set all loans. There are so many loans in Nigeria, and if we put it to this advocate.
Okay, so thank you, distinguished Senator Ome. The additional prayer is that Senate should urge the ad hoc committee that to look into all loans from COVID to straight ever set up by the federal government of Nigeria. Those who are in support of the additional prayers, those all intervention loans, those who are in favor of this additional prayer, say aye. Those who are against, say nay. The nays have it. So let me thank distinguished Senator Ndume for bringing this issue up, and then assure you that we will definitely do justice to it, so that will be satisfactory to all. And I pray that those who will be in the ad hoc committee will review the previous reports and also take additional information to arrive at something that will enable the Senate to set a pathway to justice, fairness, and fair play in future. Thank you, distinguished colleagues. Leader of the Senate. Additional prayer? No, the issue is closed. Leader of the Senate.